Today's the day. I finally have all the parts I need to start the project, so I'm gonna go ahead and tear the engine apart today, and hopefully between today and tomorrow get this thing tore apart and back together. I'll also admit that when it comes to these 1970s trucks, there's a lot of stuff on here I don't know about. I worked on some older vehicles 20 years ago, but not enough to know all these little pieces. It was the 70s. They were trying to figure out emissions, and you can tell the engineers were just kind of throwing things out there. So there's a lot of things on here that I might know what they are on a modern car, but on these old cars when they were just kind of starting out with it, it's kind of funny to see the differences and figure out what they were doing with what. One example would be the use of purge canisters or evap canisters on the GMs. You know, they're usually tucked up underneath or up on the firewall somewhere. At least on newer vehicles, you can kind of tell it has a design it was made for, and looks like there was some thought put into it. These old trucks, they basically took a vacuum line, ran it to a coffee can, and said, good enough. My goal is to eliminate as much of this as I can, so I'm gonna rip it all off here, then I'll get a Haynes manual, and when I'm going back together, I'll see what I have to keep and how much I can eliminate. It was interesting how quickly some of the stuff came back as I worked on this. I hadn't thought about these old engine parts for quite a while, but it didn't take long to be right back at it. That was the good thing about these old motors. You could just look things over and figure out what they were doing. Well, intake's off. Now to figure out what the heck that thing is and clean all this up. So that was just sitting in there under the intake. I'm not sure if that was supposed to be bolted to the bottom of the intake or what. That piece was an oil splash shield that should have been bolted to the stock manifold. Apparently the factory bolts had just sheared off, so it's just been bouncing around in there. That hose fitting and that vacuum fitting are not coming out unless I completely round them out and strip them. So it looks like I'm off to the store to see if I can find those. It is amazing how much weight difference there is. That new intake is maybe a fourth the weight of that old one. The intake's off and the gasket surfaces are all cleaned up, so it's ready for the new intake as soon as I go get those new fittings. Unfortunately, it's getting late in the day now, and it's our last day above 70 for a while. So I'm gonna go wash the Jeep and the camper, and then run to town, see if I can find my fittings, and then we'll get back at this tomorrow morning. Well, I ran to town, got the last few things I think I need to put this all together. Everything's cleaned up, so I just gotta get all these paper towels and the foil out of it, clean up that valley, and put her together. If you listen closely, you can hear the importance of the paper towels. As I pull each one out, you can hear the debris falling into the center of the intake. That's why I put the foil there, to catch all that debris, then I can easily remove it later. So one of the tricks I saw online that was a pretty neat idea was to get some all thread and thread into the corner bolts for the intake. This lets you slide the gaskets on, holds them in place, and gives you a guide to lower the intake on it nice and easy. And the intake is on and torqued in. Now time to go grab the carburetor. Well, small little roadblock. I ordered studs for the carburetor, but somehow ordered the wrong ones, so they're not the right size between the factory spacer versus the Summit version. So that means another trip to town, so I'm not sure if I'll do that this evening or tomorrow morning. So instead, I'm gonna switch focus to the headers. Figure might as well get that started too. I'm gonna need parts for that. Because of the way the factory Y pipe comes across and connects these, the output of the aftermarket headers is in a different spot than the factory manifolds. So I'm gonna have to get flanges and flex pipe and rig it up a little bit just to get it to where it's connected in, so I can drive it to the exhaust shop whenever I get it running. So I'll go ahead and tear into that. That way if I need any parts for that, I can get it all in one trip. Can't use a breaker. My original plan was just to connect some flex pipe to what's left of this stock muffler. As you'll see in a minute, I decided to go another route. It's going to be a little bit more difficult and cost a lot more money, but it's going to be the way I want it. The heater box being gone really helps get to some of these bolts. Unfortunately with this one, it wasn't going to help defeat the rust. Since I couldn't get this flange bolt to break loose, I decided to trial fit the headers to see where the output was going to be. Then I decided to say screw it.
One way to get it out.
When all else fails, sawzall.
Would you not be able to get it loose?
Yeah, I've PB blasted it for a week or two, and they still didn't want to break loose. You couldn't get an angle on it, so F it. Well, one manifold's cut out. Now to do the other one. I'll probably go ahead and put this header on and get it lined up before I start on the other side. At least you know these were the factory ones. Well, while I was under there, I went ahead and made an executive decision, and I just cut the exhaust out. I'm gonna go ahead and guess that this muffler wasn't doing much for it. Well, I was hoping to get that header on today. Unfortunately, it looks like I'm gonna have to crawl under there and take the starter out to get the header to move on past, get it bolted up, and then try to get that starter back on. Hopefully there's no interference issues, but we'll tackle that this weekend. Well, the driver's side headers are on. Unfortunately, the brake lines sit right on them. So I'm sure that's gonna just bake some brake fluid, so I'm gonna have to reroute those somehow. Then on the passenger side, I've got the starter out. So here in a few, I'm gonna try to fit that other header in there and see what I gotta do to get that to clear. But taking the starter out, it does appear that the last time they needed a starter, they just went to the junkyard. Reading online, it sounds like I can get a smaller starter off a newer truck and put in there, and that gives more clearance for the headers. So we'll see if I have to go to that or not. And even with the starter off, it looks like I can't get this header down through here. You can see the two lines running through are the transmission lines that go up to the radiator. So it looks like I'm gonna have to remove those. The problem with that is I'm gonna have to see if I'm gonna have to reroute them or if they'll go back in place once the header's in. If they'll go back in place, that presents another problem. As you can see, this header is painted, which is the paint that comes from the factory. It is just a protective paint for shipping. This side, I tried to get all that stuff stripped off there, but of course you can't get down in between all the crevices. Paint thinner wasn't working. I did try several different things that the forums showed to get that paint off there. None of them worked. I might put it together. I was recording it to show my success, which there wasn't any success. So I may put a video together showing all the ways not to get that stuff off, but that'll come later. In the meantime, my plan was to go ahead and put them on, let the heat from the engine burn off the paint, take the headers back off, and then repaint them with some high heat paint. The problem with that is if I have to remove those transmission lines, put the headers on, put the transmission lines back on, then I'd have to undo those again to get that header back off just to paint it. Moral of the story, I guess, is to buy better headers that you don't have to worry about painting. Well, if these were painted, they'd be scratched to hell by now.
Yep.
Closer. And there's a spark plug that definitely needs replaced. Well, now it appears we're hitting the holder for the battery line that goes to the starter. I think we're there. Headers are officially on. Now to relocate brake lines, see if the starter will still fit down there, and reinstall the transmission lines and hope that they fit. Well, good morning. So it's Sunday morning, heading out to the truck again. The headers kind of kicked my butt yesterday, so that's about all I got done. Between that and trying to work with those transmission lines. So I got the studs to put the carburetor on. So hopefully I'll get those on, button up all the parts that I actually have here for it, get them all on, and then give you a quick overview of it, show you where I'm at, and then I'll also go over what I need to order this week to get the next round of parts on. I know it's going to end up getting dirty, but man, it looks good with the new parts on there. It took me several attempts to get the linkage right for the kickdown cable and the carburetor connections. It came with this extension cable for the kickdown. After installing it, the rest of the connections wouldn't line up right. I ended up removing it. It says you need that for the kickdown cable, but it appears that the aftermarket intake repositions the carburetor to where that's not necessary. You'll notice the red cable coming off the electric choke. That's one thing I still have not gotten to yet. I'm gonna have to dig into the wiring harness and find a right spot to connect in to get that powered. Well, that's a wrap for this weekend. So the good side is I got a lot of parts on, all the big parts are on. The bad side is now it's all the small stuff. So I still have to get a 90-degree elbow for the heater hose that goes in the intake. I'll order that this week. I need more 3/8 vacuum hose to run from the power brake booster to the back of the carburetor and get that done. I'm also still gonna have to relocate the brake lines because they're sitting right on the headers. This week I'll also have to order the tools to do the transmission lines that go up to the radiator. At the same time, I'm gonna have to order the 5/16 line that I need to be able to reroute all those, get those away from the headers. And then I'm also gonna have to start mapping out exhaust. Because of the way it relocated and the way you have to cut across, the factory wide pipe is not gonna work. So I think I'm just gonna run straight pipes all the way back. Of course, that means 2 mufflers and all the extra pipes, so of course more expense. So this week I'll sit down, start mapping out all the list of all these little small things I need and hopefully get them ordered next weekend and then get this thing to a point where we can actually crank her over.